Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Nivarti Jairam. Thanks for joining. And we have Mr. Akhilesh Chaturvedi as well along with us. So, this is the inaugural session of the Seekers. This is a book readers club that we launched for the community, and we are looking at rather speeding up the learning in terms of sharing knowledge across the community through specific learnings being shared from the books that each of us would read. And we are launching this with Akhil. And before I introduce Akhil, I think we'll just start with a quick video of our own the community seekers, the introduction, and then look at the sponsor as well for the event. And the sponsor for this event is Digital Agility Institute, and it's a community organization that we are trying to build. And currently, we are also running a program called Expert Scrum Master, which is an experiential learning program that is being run by volunteers. And we have about 25 to 26 participants at this time going through the program. So let's look at Digital Agility Institute and what they do, what they specialize in. So Digital Agility Institute specializes in building capability programs, running experiential learning programs, and also lots of templates are being created by them which are ready to use. Now, let me introduce Akhil here. So, Akhil is founder and CEO of Yayati Consulting, and I know him for the last 7+ years now. And he's also my coach. So, everybody needs a coach, is what we both strongly believe in. So, I've been working with Akhil for a long time now, and together we are also writing a book on digital agility. So, welcome Akhil to the session, and also thank you for kicking us off with the first book review that we are starting today. And before we start with the book itself, anything you like to share about yourself, or why you are here?
Yeah, I think you have shared enough, and people can go and look at about ourselves from the LinkedIn. But I wanted to pass on with pause a gratitude to my mentor, and the idea behind starting this book club. None other than Anant Krishnan, who made us to say, you know what? Why don't we start? We have many people in our community who are reading books and sharing about their books. So why don't we start this journey? And my humble um, obedience to him, and he had been the mentor, and he has always asked to reflect back, take a sit back and reflect at what we are trying to do and how we wanted to do. And thanks him for doing and preparing us to do that. It's kind of innovative ideas and the opportunities that we have got Nivarti together to drive with our community. And I also like to thank you and the rest of the people who are excited about starting this journey of reading, learning together in the shared growth and learning for all of us.
Wonderful, and we have Anant on the session as well. Probably sometime down the line, we will invite him as well onto the stage. And we are also privileged to have Urmila Kanda, a good friend again. She has written 2 books so far, and at some stage we will also have Urmila coming and presenting her own books, and also probably some more books as well. And others, all those who have joined, thanks a lot for joining us, and we will continue with our discussion as we go forward. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. You have a separate column for Q&A, so you can post your questions there, and we also have a few polls that we will run during the session. So starting off, Akhil, you brought out the first book that you want to refer to as the pause principle, and step back to lead forward. So why this book to start?
Hmm. And I'm taking the deep breath in before I answer this.
Hmm.
It's always important um, to take a deep breath in before we start working, to have our sense of inner awareness and the outer awareness comes together to do that. And that is exactly this book talks about in the beginning of the book. It talks about we live and lead in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And paradoxically, the author Kevin Castman contend that the leaders or the coaches should pause more deeply. And when they pause more deeply, consciously, then they understand that how to lead forward. So even in our journey of the book readers club, how do you want it to go about? Let's take a deep pause. How do you want to make this community sustained and a lot of people join us to share their learnings and experiences? And with that note, I said, let's start with the pause principles. Let's not jump in. Understand that how can we pause to make a real good innovation in the book sharing and learning from each other.
Hmm. Interesting. And when you say this, probably the reason you choose also maybe that it is very close to you. That could also be. I'm assuming that probably is the case as well. And if it is so, why is this topic? Why does it matter to you so much, right? And because even when I asked, you said, okay, I'm taking a pause. I'm taking a deep breath. So why is it so close to you?
Well, it again, and that's a question I have always asked myself, and I say since 2014 onwards, when I I hang my boots from the corporates and started my own journey. Myself and Anand, we started a leadership program for one of the organizations, and we were interacting with a lot of people during the training program. And I was jumping and answering the questions to many of them, and probably it was not connecting. And afterwards, when we came out of the first day of the session, he said, Akhil, what would happen if you step back and see what's going on before you start answering to them? And I think at that point of time, I did not like it. But later on, when I reflected back, I really took a deep pause and I said, what exactly that means? It gave me the sense that yes, I had a habitual tendency to jump into and start answering and start interacting, rather take a pause, understand that what exactly is happening, and then start working from there. When I read this book, one of the principles we'll talk about, it talks about that how do you take a deep breath in, how do you go back to take the leap forward. So that has become kind of the 2015 onwards as a coach also, that's a very detrimental to success, and therefore I felt that this is going to be a very unique book. Now the another reason, and I want to put that together, last year myself and Anand joined another program for team coaching. We both signed up for one of the leading team coaching programs to become a good team coaches. And one of the references when we were going through this program, I saw the pause principle, and that none other than the Peter Hawkins and the David Clutterberg, both of them are the gurus in the team coaching world. They said that please read this pause principle, and that's where I read, and I found that the profound ideas into this, that what is so important to take a pause as a coaches, and how exactly it is going to transform not only us but also the people with whom we are going to interact and work with. So that's the second reason why I felt that it is important to start with this.
Hmm. And since you are referring to Anant so much, and Anant is also saying that he will probably need to drop off in 10 minutes, why not have Anant on stage for a few minutes and let him also talk about the importance of pause.
Yeah,
Anant,
and that will give me a pause, right? So that I can get some breathing and pause and then recollect myself. Yes, let's go with him.
Okay. Am I on now?
yes, hi Anant.
Hello. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much, I think, for all the kind words that Akhil just mentioned. I'm still not sure if you guys can see me, right?
No, we can't.
Not yet, Anant.
Okay. I just said join stage now. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we can hear
switch on
you.
your video. So if you can switch on
I
your video.
did. I did. I don't know why it's not coming up. In fact, it showed me the video. But anyway, thank you very, very much, Nivarti, for giving me and inviting me. I do have to jump out. My apologies on that. And thanks so much, Akhil, for your very, very kind words. I'm not sure if I'm deserving of that. Um, but yeah, I think from a pause perspective, I've just realized that it typically diffuses the situation more than anything else. We are all emotional human beings, and more often than not, there would be a tendency to react. We sometimes, even call it the amygdala hijack. I think the way our brain is constructed itself, and I also realize it's easily said than done. As much as we can talk about the need for pausing, it doesn't sometimes come naturally. In fact, it's still work in progress as far as I'm concerned. But I have realized the value of that. So it's really about how does one do it. One has to just practice it. I'm sure one has different ways to get there as well. But I just feel it's probably one of the important things to do. It enables us to step back and look at the bigger picture. I sort of say stepping back onto the balcony and looking at the dance floor. And that pause enables us to see a picture which we may not be in a position to see while we are actually in the dance floor itself.
Yeah, I agree. And if I reflect back in the last 1 year or 1.5 year from the time the pandemic hit us, Anant, I think it kind of forced not just us as individuals, but even the organizations to take that pause and really reflect to look at what our immediate priorities are. Otherwise, you are so much caught up in the way of life as individuals, as groups, or as families, or as businesses.
Hmm.
We don't even take time to really stop and reflect where you are on that journey, whether you are on the right path, are you doing the right things, do you have the right priorities that you are focusing on. So I think even the pandemic kind of uh, halted everybody in the world, at a majority, right? Not, if not 100%, to forcibly take that pause as well.
Wonderful point. Wonderful point. And in fact, for me, the pandemic provided me an opportunity to not just look at self, but in some sense, I think feel so grateful when you see what's happening around you as well. So the ecosystem and you, we are not two separate things in some way. So it also provides us an opportunity to look at the ecosystem and, in some sense, I think get your own sense of where you belong, what you do over there, and how do you make progress and so on. So I think it's a great point about the pandemic.
Yeah. Thanks,
So
Anant,
keep
and
going.
thanks
I
for
think, yeah, please go ahead. I don't want to derail the
your
conversation. So over to you both. Thank you so very much.
Just
and
to
thanks.
1 minute, Anand, before you leave, the one of the things that in this book we always talked about, and I was just when I was going through this book, couple of months back, I realized that we you have been always talking about the character of a leader and the self-awareness of the leader. Where exactly that is stemmed from, where exactly that sprout, and then am I noticing my character? Am I able to access that and see that how it is going to helpful to me, right? And then you always has talked about the authenticity. So this book has become so resonating with our work, what we have been doing in the leadership programs for a few of our clients. The authenticity, the character of the person, all that comes as a part of the pause principles. Yeah, and then when I was reading this book and reflecting back onto that, taking a pause, as this book suggests to you to take a pause before you start reading few other pages, I was reminding myself in your conversations most of the times the last 6 7 years. And how do you say, how do we build our character? How do we take a step back? How do we take the feedback, the other perspectives? So all that we would be, I will be missing you. I believe you probably would have not said that you are going back. Probably I would have been keeping you in image and do that. But yeah, nevertheless, next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anand. And to
Thanks to everyone,
continue,
and have a great show. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
thanks. So to continue with that, Akhil, you've been touching on a lot of principles, right? That the book covers.
Mhm.
What are the core principles or message the book provides?
Hmm. Yes, so we'll get there. There are 7 principles that they talk about. Give me a second before we go there. Just there is some sequence I put together again to answer your questions. May have to take a deep pause, and I'll go there.
Okay.
And in this book, what he talks about is what is the pause is first. What is the pause? So let's understand that, and then we'll get into the principles of it. And I would ask, the audience out here, our participants, that what they think about what is the pause is all about. What is their thinking about? What the pause is, and if they can put together in the chat box their understanding about the pause, it will be really good, and then we can take it up from there. Let's wait for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. I think if somebody wants to, people on the session, if you can put your definition of pause, how do you define or what do you understand by pause in the chat? I think that would be great. If someone wants to join the stage and express their opinion, please feel free to raise your hand. There is an option to raise hand, and we can invite you to the stage as well. However you want to, you know, address this, it's perfectly okay. It's all about being more interactive.
Hmm. So, Nivarti, if you look at in the Q&A box, Hari Krishna says it's a time to take between a stimulus and your response to any questions and the challenge.
Hmm.
Yeah, good part of it.
Okay, that's great. Any other thoughts by anyone else? No, I think we'll progress, Akhil.
Yeah. So, if you read this book, and I was also taking a deep pause and trying to think of it, he talks about pause is an intentional, conscious step to take yourself back and go deeply within yourself and look at your leadership. So go deeply inside yourself, look at your own leadership, and we are all leaders, and also take a step back to see the world, experience the world consciously. And it's a deliberate purpose to stepping back and becoming aware of the 3 spaces: you, your leadership, as well as allies with the world in which you belong to. And what he says is that when you do this, it will power the performance of yours and your team and your organization. This is the time, this talks about that the pause is giving yourself and your team the ability to stop a speeding train. There is a train which is speeding, and when you are speeding very high, then there is a chances that you will derail. So the pause is that which you are giving the chance for the speeding train to slow down so that it will not derail. And he takes a very beautiful example of his life, and he talks about himself that he was writing this book for the last 10 years. And the 5 years down the line, he decided to come and meet the Dalai Lama. And he was tired going all across the globe onto his assignments of coaching assignments and the leadership development program he does with the CEOs. He decided to come to India. And when he came to Delhi, both of them, his wife and his wife, who is an Indian, and himself, both became sick. And for the 8 days, they had to stay back in a hotel. And he said that was the power of pause. They had to rest completely. And he said that after that particular sickness, he could not go anywhere. He had to confine to this particular hotel. He got such an amount of energy, that with that, he could write something which he has never done in his lifetime. So he talks about that the pause powers the performance by this particular example. With the pause, you can, he talks about that when you have a pause of this kind, you can activate your latent power, which he has done in his writings, and embody the richness of your leadership. You can embody the richness of your business and its teams. This is what he talks about in whole of that. Now, with this, what you when you go through this particular book, and I have learned a few things from this book. What he talks about is that how do you flip the VUCA world, and I'm sure that you all know the VUCA world. He says that the pause, when you have a pause, it revitalizes your coaching and the leadership journey. Just give me a second, and then we will stop for the reflections. Urmila, thank you so much. It talks about the VUCA world and flipping that. And let's take a pause. That how do you flip the VUCA world? Let's reflect onto that, and then we'll go forward. Yes, Urmila.
Yeah, I think Urmila was replying to our question of what do you think is pause, a moment of stillness to reflect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happens in the VUCA world when you have a moment of reflections, stepping back and have a reflections, a deep level of the reflections, connectedness with yourself? He says that we flip the volatility to vision. The you, which is uncertainty, flip to understanding. Complexities flip to clarity, and ambiguity flip to agility. So this is where you will be able to revitalize your coaching and the leadership abilities, and you will be able to flip that through if you take a moment of pause. Yeah. Then he talks about when you take a pause and breathe into your life, not only breathe into the life, but it also breathe into the life of the workspace. And when you bring this life to the workspace, it brings the growth for the self, for the others, and very powerfully he talks about in the last chapter the culture of innovation. The pause brings the growth for the self, for the others, and the culture of innovation. When he looks at that, he says that the pause principles, and I completely, and I'm closing my eyes to reflect on what Urmila said. is going to harness the transformative force of the purpose. So when you take a deep breath in and reflect back onto that, it is having the transformative force and connects you with that. What is the purpose of me? What is the purpose of my team? And what is the purpose of my organization? And when you talked about the me, it talks about not only the workspace of me, but the entire life of me. And then he talks about that the three interrelated causes for you, for the others, and for the innovation or for the organizations, and how it makes that entire growth spur over that. And a beautiful example he gave. What is the tendency of a grass when you look at what is written onto the grass? He talks about that every grass which you find everywhere, there is an angel which comes and sits on top of it, and he says only one mantra: grow, grow, and grow. So the pause is to grow. The only mantra of the pause, which you have a deep pause, it is going to create the growth for you, for others, as well as for the organizations. When you shift the focus internally and also the outwardly, and we will talk about the continuity of that, it creates a possibility to help create a culture of innovation in your organization. And then the author goes and introduces that, as you rightly talked about, Nivarti, the uh, seven, seven principles of the pause. And the first one he talks about what is the principles of the first one is that be on the purpose. So you have to stay back, and then how am I on the purpose? And as Uma was talking about, let me become a reflective. So reflective before the action, reflective, being reflective in action, and reflective after the action is the pause principles which I picked up from being on the purpose. It is when you do this kind of a reflections before, in, and out, then you are creating the intersections of competencies and the contribution that will aspire you to achieve something bigger, something beyond us. And that is what he talks about, that it will give you the context, it will give you the drive, and it will give you the meaning for the personal growth, as we talked about. It will give you the talent growth, and it will also give you the growth of the innovation. And most importantly, far more reaching, transformating pause of all is going to be felt by the outside of your organization, by the society, and by the world at large. And he talks about examples of Steve Jobs, and he goes into and talks about some of the scientists and how they have used it. But the second principles, when he talks about, he says that, and I think Nivarti, it resonates with me quite a lot: questions and the listen. How do you listen and how do you question? So the pause, one of the principles of the pause, or the tools for the pause, is that is important to pause. So we keep on giving the answers. We have a habitual habits of providing the solutions, and that's what he talks about. Very important that the questions are the language of pause. It is a language of probing language of that. How am I going to reflect back, take a seat back, and reframe what we have been doing? What is the solution we are coming out? It reframes to come out of the status quo which we have and reconsider how are we going to take the step forward. And
So,
then
so when you say that, sorry, Akhil. So when you say that, right, that okay, it talks. The author talks about questioning and listening.
Mhm.
So what I understand is it's more inward looking. So how you are listening to yourself, and also how you are questioning yourself, than being in the flow, uh, more operating than reflecting. So it's more inward looking, right? So just to be
we'll
clear.
we'll come back to that. So this is applied to all the three stages, as you
Okay.
talked about, that the pause for self. So and very beautiful question you have asked. There are two kind of coaching that is coming to my head, right? That the leaders as a coaches. So when you wanted people to find out their ways to do that, and you wanted them to pause and not to run their trains of providing the solutions and getting into the status quo, you ask the questions to them. You listen to them what's going on. At the same time, there is a self-coaching model, and there is a one guy who has developed a self-coaching framework using the ICF, wherein you are questioning the way you have been. You are listening to your body at that attunement to the work, your tiredness, your anger, your happiness, whatever that it is coming to, your belief, your strength, your character, your authenticity. So, are you asking the questions? Are you listening to all of that to yourself? And then the third is that he talks about is the innovation. So the listening and the questioning for our way of being from the products and services perspective. Are we asking the right questions? Are we listening to the customers? Are we listening to the people who are going through this particular process of developing the products for us? So this questioning and the listening goes to all the three levels of the pause which he talks about.
And that also gives me a view that possibly the author has based this also on the integral theory, right? So when you are talking about self questioning, looking at pausing yourself and then reflecting on how it equates or how it impacts or influences how you look at the whole society or the organization as well. Do you think that is the case?
I think you're right. It's if you look at the Ken Wilber's integral theory, it talks about the I, the we, the process, and the culture.
Yeah.
Right? I, we, it, and the system. And then if you look at the pause, you are going to look at all the four dimensions of it. So for sure, the pause for the integral phenomena to happen, this is the integrity process, if I have to say in that way. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. Please continue. I think you talked about three principles so far.
Now I have talked about two, so I have been taking a pause in between. So the third
Okay.
one is called risk experimentation. When you take a pause, then there is a risk experimentation, and he gave a beautiful idea of, are you being manager or are you a leader? So what is the risk experimentation with the managers? So managers minimizes the risks and experimentation to increase the predictability. That's a beautiful thing he talked about. And leaders take a pause to monitor the risks and accelerate the experimentation to foster the breakthrough. So he talks about that. Look at the different way of being a manager and being a leader. And he talks about risking experimentation is pausing at the edgy, uncomfortable intersections of current realities and the future reality. So that's the third one. That how do you, as a leader, when you take a pause, for what you take a pause, and how it is going to change. The fourth principle is when he talks about the reflect and synthesize. And again, it looks like he is using the managers and the leaders um, role, and he goes about that you need to sift. If you are more of a pause guy, then you are more of a leader. And what he talks about the fourth principle is being a great leader. You take a time to analyze, to discover a higher order and more strategic, forward thinking solution. And when you are a manager, you are trying to solve the problems of today, trying to find out the solutions of the right now. What he talks about is that, and I really like what Urmila said. I think Urmila, right? So she said that
Yeah.
the reflections. And he talks about in this that reflexive synthesis is equally important for leaders to develop self-awareness. talent awareness, and innovation breakthrough. So when he says that when you reflect back and synthesize it, it will provide you the self awareness. Oh, what's happening with me? What is my inner self and what is my outer self awareness being? And then you will also find out that how exactly the talent awareness is, where exactly they are, and what is going to happen in the innovation space. And what he talks about is when you reflect and synthesize, it is going to unlock the doors of authenticity, and which is very, very deeply. And maybe I would like to stop here before we move forward. He says that when you reflect and synthesize, then it opens for you to be authentic, become transformative, and become innovative. And let me stop here. Any questions comes from our enthusiastic listeners of what we are talking about.
Yeah, again, so far we talked about the pause itself,
Mhm.
and we also talked about the three principles and the intent behind the pause, and you also talked about the pause for self, pause for the persons whom we are dealing with, and the environment we are in as well, right?
Yeah.
So any questions from anyone or any reflections from anyone that you like to share so far? Hmm. Looks like we have a quite audience today, being the first one.
Looks like they're on the pause journey, by the way.
Yeah, Urmila says, any stories you would like to share on leveraging this principle to facilitate leadership agility? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a great question. Akhil, if you want to answer, and I'll add on at the end as well.
Right, 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 right. So I will give you one a story, and he talks about in this book. In the beginning of the book itself, he talks about one of the stories. Let me just share that a story with you. Um, he talked about um, the one of the story where he says that um, he he went to a book expo, America, in Chicago, and it was a huge event with thousands of people and hundreds of authors. And every half an hour or so, 32 authors step out from behind and come forward on the elevated podium to sign books. And then the attendees will line up in the long rows, and they will wait to receive the signed copy from the authors. And while he felt it's a too much bit of formalities, but he said, okay, what's a big deal for me? Let me go through that. Then what happened that he also came out, and beside him there was an author called George Stephanopoulos. At that point of time, he was the chief political correspondent for ABC, and he was formerly the White House communication directors and the senior advisor for policy and strategies during the President Bill Clinton's administration. And George looked a very teenager, but he was unfazed with the event, cool, calm, and collected, which was his in the complete contrast of the visible enthusiasm. And when he took the spot on a spot on the elevated podium, George's line was a very, very long. It was looking like it is going on forever. And just cornered beside him, he saw the line where only 7 people were there. They were looking for signed a book from author. And what he said that he felt embarrassment for himself. He felt insecure and he felt disbelief. And he was asking himself, am I at a correct spot? And then he took a pause and a step back for the moment. And he said that he reflected and said that, how do I best deal with this situation? How do I deal best with this particular situation? And that moment, a reflection gave him a renewed clarity and the purpose. And I remember this book. He says that when he reflected deeply onto that, it says it's not about me. It's about these 7 people. I will graciously, generously give them my full attention. And once he made this particular shift, he had a great time with those people, connecting deeply, learning about them, each individuals who have come to sign up that book, and it became the wonderful experience. As he was, because he was spending some time with each one of them, talking to them, understanding who they are, what they are, and whatever, and he was enjoying his wonderful experience. He found that his line has become very big, miraculously, and long line of the people awaiting for his signature. And he glanced over the George, and his line was like emptied. Hmm. And that was because his book did not arrive, and his book did not arrive, so that he can sign up to all of these people, and then he was signing on to his own photo and signature and give it to them. And then he looked at that, and the George looked at him and says that, hey, you would have written a very good book. And he said that, yeah, if you want a copy, I can give it to you. The truth is that he felt bad about it, but he had been very happy that the pause powered the performance. He was able to engage with those 7 people and spend some time. And at that moment of time, some other miraculous things had happened, right? If he would have missed out that small but very significant moment, he would have lost the opportunities to unlock the hearts and minds of his and the people with whom he was, and connect deeply with this, all the 7 peoples, and create something very different, new for him and for the rest of the people who lined up. And what he says that if you are pausing, then you are not hyperactive, too reactive. You will also understand there is a value creating dynamics waiting under the surface within us and around us. So if you take that particular pause, if you just take that, you will be able to locate the submerged purpose of yours, and that will give you the enormous amount of satisfactions and the performance for which you have been. Urmila, I hope that give you some story about how exactly he has used in his life.
Yeah, I think one story that I have been part of, and that I could reflect also, was as leaders when we are in organizations operating day to day, right? So we are so much in the operationalization or the metrics that we need to fulfill, the KRAs that we need to take care of, running between meetings and all that. So if you don't take a pause at certain points in time and seek feedback openly with the team, there is a great chance that you would lose out on the trust factor, and also on the environment that you are trying to create for your team. I'll tell you my own personal experience. So I've been with the Society General for 3 years, and as part of the role itself, right? So it's been quite busy time when I was operating as head of transformation, and we had a big team to deal with. And as I went through the operations and day-to-day work, I felt okay, the team is well integrated, they have a good safe environment to speak. And during one-on-one discussion with one of the members of the team, I asked him, okay, do you have any feedback for me? And the feedback that he gave was entirely eye-opening. He said, okay, when you are in a meeting room with us, when you are stationary in your seat, you are very approachable. But when you are moving from your seat to any meeting, or you are in the transit, you are so serious that we feel very, uncomfortable to approach you, and as a leader you don't want that to happen, right? Because you are looking to create an environment where they always feel welcomed to have a conversation with you. And I never realized, if I hadn't paused there and sought that feedback consistently with everyone, and give that, to create that environment of trust, I would have lost out on a critical element. Think about somebody having a very great emergency and I am running whole day and they don't
Mm.
feel comfortable to come and talk to me,
Yeah.
right? So that was a big, big revelation for me, that yes, it is important for us to always pause at every point in time, not just to depend on your own perception,
Mm.
right? Okay, I'm doing everything the best I can, and everybody is, feeling comfortable in operating with me as a member of the team. I
Mm.
think that is very important, to stop at any given point in time and ask for that feedback from everybody that you operate with.
Yeah. And in Nirvati, you know what? This is the way you have touched the fourth principles which he talked about, and we'll go into the deeper details of that as well. There is one question has come from Hari Krishna. How can you get facilitate a team to pause? Yeah,
Yeah.
and uh, it's a very good question. And in this book, you will find out that he talks about, hey, what is sleep is all about. He starts with that. That a beautiful conversation I found, that what happens when you have a good sleep. And Hari Krishna, you can chat or maybe you can come on the videos and then let's have a little conversation, and then we can take it up from there. So if you can allow Hari Krishna to come, Nivarti.
Yeah, and while we are doing that, and another thing that probably we tried in our team in
Mhm.
order to pause was, uh, every month we kept about 3 hours for each and every person to come and present what they have done in that 1 month, and rest everybody provides a feedback, and everybody rates their performance, including myself as the leader there, right? So it's not an exception to anyone, each and everyone has to come and present. So that's a moment for pause as well, because you are stopping at that point of time, reflecting on what you have done over the last month as an individual and as a team, and how the others are reflecting on or perceiving your valuable work that you have done, right?
Okay.
You may feel that I am doing the greatest thing in the world, but the team doesn't feel, and they don't value it the way you are expecting it to be, right? That then creates a lot of trust deficit as you move ahead. And when you reach the end of the year, you need to have long conversations to make everyone comfortable in their own skins.
Mm.
So we tried that. That was one of the ways we asked the team to pause on monthly basis, and
Mm.
then start reflecting and how everybody is looking at you. So it's not just your own reflection, it's also the perception you have created within the whole system that you are operating in. So that's something we tried, Hari, as well. And yeah, Akhil, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is beautiful what you have shared, and looks like you have read this book, Nivarti. It talks about it. I'm just taking a step for backward, as this book talks about, right? The first question is that, and in this book, Hari, if you can switch on your video, it's a very nice to discuss about it, right? So,
Yeah.
so first of all, that, when you are in the world of the VUCA, you are racing forward. Your train is faster and the faster and the faster, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, boss, hold your horses. Slow down your trains. They will say, boss, we are here to, execute faster, deliver faster. And you're talking about the pause, right? So they will not even understand what are you talking about until unless they understand what is the pause is all about, right? And I've tried out just recently in one of our consulting assignment, and I took it from this book itself. He says, okay, What happens when you sleep? What is sleep means to you, right? Um, so he says, "But I want to sleep." So okay, so what is that need for you to sleep? And then the leader he said, you know what? When I lie down, sleep, and real good sleep when I have without the pills, I have a renewed energy,
Yeah.
vitality, and the perspective. A perspective also shift because I have a different view which I can access from the unconscious. Yeah. Um, and when I said, okay, take a moment to consider how profound the sleep really is for you, which I picked up from this book. When you go every night to sleep fatigued and possibly a stress from the day which you have been, and when you go back home, or when you're working in a virtual environment and sitting at your chair and whatnot, you also feel the very tight in the body. The somatic experience of the stress also felt onto the body, right?
Yeah.
And when you just sleep a proper sleep of 6 to 7 hours, you feel completely rejuvenated. The muscles ache would have gone, the mental stress would have been left, and you will feel energetic physically, mentally, and emotionally. And this is the amazing natural capabilities for the transforming ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But what we do is that we abuse this inherent gift. We replace this with overwork, increases stress, and too much stimulations, right? And that's in this book it talks about that. Imagine how challenging our lives would be when you have no sleeps. Maybe you will end up going to your hospitals, isn't it?
Yeah.
He says that when you sleep, when you sleep, you find out this particular body, mind, and emotions. Similarly, the pause is to leadership, is to innovate. The pause transform the management into the leadership, and the pause transforms the status quo into the new realities. Right? So when you take this up and then you put together the context with them from their experiences, I think you will realize it. Right? And we just give that example of the pause, like the sleep is a natural transformative process. If it is ignored, we cannot operate at the peak level of our performance.
Yeah.
Right? And that's more than enough for us to get engaging with them. And as Nivarti talked about, that how do you create the pause process, what is that you can do, and that's is that questioning and the listening. And there are some other things that we talked already. Nivarti has spoken about the feedback,
Yeah.
getting the different perspective from the people, right? The feedback and the perspective from the others, and also asking them to come out with the solutions, right? So that's the fourth principles we talked about, Nivarti, as we were talking about. Yeah.
Thanks, Hari. Thanks for being here again. And I think we have another question, that is coming from Amit.
Hmm.
We'll appreciate if you can share your experience of implementing these principles with a leadership team. Maybe I
Yeah.
can start, and I'll definitely
So
share
why
some.
don't you go, Nivarti, and then let me take a pause and get that experience with one of the transformation work which we are doing in one of the companies in UK, and we'll talk about that. So how did we do the pause with them? So you go and share, and then I will bring my
Yeah,
experience as well.
sure. I think one of the challenges that we also face, like everybody else, is about how do you engage or how do you instill the ownership of transformation to the leaders of the business units that you are transforming, right? And ensure they are participating in the transformation exercise. That's one of the challenges we always talk about. And nothing different. Most organizations have those challenges, and we too had. So what we did was we planned a complete session for the leadership group, took them to a kind of external place, a resort, and then we ran a workshop for accountability to ownership. And that was a moment where we kind of made them pause, sit at one place, take them out of their routine day to day operational environment, and ask them questions. Okay, who do you think should be owning the transformation in the organization, right? And everybody at that point of time said, you are the head of transformation, so you should be owning the transformation. So the point is, I as a head of transformation, I own how the transformation program is implemented, how it is strategized in the organization. But do I own the transformation? The question we asked them was, okay, who do you think can define what you're going to achieve as an outcome from the transformation of your teams, right? And they said, yes, it is for us to look at and it is for us to define. Okay, whose team is transforming here? And we also asked them, can you tell us, draw out a kind of list of things that your team needs to change if the team has to go through transformation and they successfully transform? What all do you think they will change? And they wrote a big list of things. Okay, our team needs to be autonomous and all that. And at the end, the question we asked them was, okay, where are you in this? Are you part of the team? Are you outside the team? Where are you as an individual? And that was a moment of reflection for them to say that, okay, where do you consider yourself within the team? Are you a team member because you are leading that team, or you are an outside entity looking at the team from an entirely different perspective, right? So that is one of the experiments we did, and it worked quite well for us in that particular session. And when we came back from that, we could see a lot of difference in the way they engaged in the participation. And it's not, and more or less we try to say that or put the blame on leadership for non-engagement, but we need to understand they are in the flow. But and it's for us to create that pause, right? So that is something which we need to do. That was my experience, Akhil. Probably you can go ahead and share what you have.
Yeah. So this is really a good question, and what you said is that the pause principles, the fourth he talks about, Nivarti. Um, he while explaining it, and I will talk about my own journey in what I'm working with 7 to 8 leaders of this organization at a senior level. It talks about in this book, it talks about the continuous loop of authentic self-awareness. Um, and what is meaning of continuous loop of authentic self-awareness? And if you look at that, the loop, it is nothing but a DevOps loop. Huh? So what he talks about is that in the loop, the left side is inside out, and the right side of the loop is outside in. And what is meaning of inside out? The inside out is, and I asked this, so when we were going through that, we did one exercise, and in this book also it mentions, we did one exercise. And the exercise was that, intently reflect on the values, which there is a mechanism which you can do to value exercise. There is the assessment which you can do, but then let them reflect intently on the values. What is that the more important, significant values they have? What is their beliefs? What are their patterns? What are their characteristics? And the personal history for how exactly they go deep inside to come out. What has happened in the past when they deeply reflected within with the values, the beliefs, the patterns, the characteristics. And then they have defined their journey. So we ask questions to these guys. There are a number of questions which we asked, and then we look at that. Okay, so the questions come from the wisdom and the knowledge, where they have shown the courage, where they have shown the humanity, where they have shown this the strength like teamwork, fairness, leadership, where they have shown the temperaments, and where they have looked at the where they have shown their gratitude, where they have shown their hope, where they have shown their humor, where they have shown their spirituality, faith, and the purpose. And when you reflect onto this, it gives you the space from inside out. So this is how exactly I have been. Now, this is good to go from this space, Amit. But there is another thing which comes into the play is that what is the outside in method, and which Nivarti has aptly talked about it, is that this is the I, it's an inside out view, and that the outside in view is the we view, we perspective, where you pause to gain the feedback, you pause to get the perspective from the others, and you pause to get the insights from the others from the outside in view. So there is a challenge which was present to all of them, to this particular leadership team, and the guy who was running this particular initiative, he asked them to take the perspective from the others, and it took like 1.5 hours to get the perspective about the challenges which they wanted to solve. He started reaching out to each one of them to get the insights, that what is that this C is the challenges, the risks associated with that, the opportunities which they have, and also they started to get the feedback that how this particular person has addressed the challenges which was given to him, not only from these 7-8 people, but also collect some of the other important people who have been in the part of that initiative. And when he got that view, he found that there's a very profound understanding of what exactly he was thinking and what he has got from. Yeah. And then his values, his belief, his patterns, and what is the mismatch between what he values and how it has been exhibited when he goes outside. So when he got that inside out view and outside in view, he started realizing about his authenticity and about himself. He's becoming more of awareness about himself. And that has really, really helped to quickly come out and move forward. Yeah. Nivarti, any
Yeah.
other questions? Yeah.
So I don't see any further questions so far.
Okay.
I think it's something again, reflection that we are getting from Hari, seeking feedback as a team together to each other in a scheduled specific time in a psychologically safe environment. And again, Hari, my experience has been that you have to be emphasizing about it being a psychologically safe environment in every iteration. Uh, and it's not like one time you say and it is agreed by everyone, right? So continuous emphasis on that is important for everybody to be able to express themselves, and not everybody does it at one go. So how you are making that environment continuously safer for the teams is the challenge and an opportunity as well. Okay, I think we are getting to the end of an hour, Akhil.
So I will just finish this two quickly,
Yes.
the other two, which is very powerful ones in my mind, and I really liked it. So 6 principles which he talks about in this particular book is about foster generativity, and anyone can share what is meaning of generativity. What is generativity is all about, and that too is the fostering the generativity within the organization or within the self, right? So he talks about that if you wanted to pause and take a deep of it, that you need to develop the people around you, right? It's not about that I'm growing myself, but not the others. So do you have the generativity to go and mentor, go and coach the people who can come and replace you at one point of time, and so that you can move? So there is another pause principles, that how much time you take to go and develop the people who are with you, who are the people around the society. How are you mentoring some people inside the organization and outside the organizations? Are you working with the society? So how are you showing your generativity with the people around you, and outside of you. And then what he says is that as a leader, if you're taking a pause to prepare the next generation, and you're pausing not for the personal success but generating the next generation of the leaders and next generation of the society, it it fosters a rich atmosphere for human potential to flourish. So that's the another principles he talks about, that make a note of it, and how you want it to create the generativity within you. And that's a very powerful pause principles, and I believe in that anyway quite a lot. Any question onto that, and let's hear from others that how much they have been a generative about it, how much they go and coach people, how much they go and mentor the people who are around them. I'm sure that a lot of coaches. And he talks about, and I in my view is that Nurmila is out here also writing a book, also writing a piece of your creative process, also writing about your authentically putting together your thought process is also a generative approach to the society. So we are always taking from the Google something, or we are also giving back to the Google, which can be shared across the globe. Yeah. So anyway, let's hear from others that how they have been a generative in their work and how they feel when they have been generative.
Yeah, anyone who likes to come on stage and share their experience of, it's more about how you create leadership within the organizations, right? And how you're creating that succession planning in the organizational state. Probably outside it's more about helping people to be their best version of themselves, but within the organization it amounts to more of succession planning, how you're creating that, identifying the right talent to build and mentor and coach, and then how you're taking that initiative and being proactive to be dispensable in the organization. And it does bring out a kind of nostalgia to me, because the first article I wrote on LinkedIn was about being dispensable. So it's a great you know thing to have always. Yeah, let's bring in Urmila, because I think she wants to share something. One moment, let me invite Urmila. I think you should have the invite to be on stage now.
Yeah, hi, Nivrati and everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Urmila, you are very much audible. Thanks for joining us. And for all those who are here, Urmila has been a good friend, and we have connected probably, Urmila, 4 5 years ago, if I'm right.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I did reach out to her as well when I was writing my first book, and I hit the writers, the block, the stumbling block, and I was talking to her to say, "Hey, Urmila, can you help me? How do we tide over this?" I remember that conversation even today. Yeah, go ahead, Urmila.
And
So I
before
think,
Urmila, if you could switch on your video, please, if that's okay with
um,
you.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can see
yeah.
you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
before she shares, I just wanted to share my gratitude to her. Anivarti, if you recall, Urmila, um, when we were developing the DevOps coach program, and we are stuck at one point of time, me, Dimit, Nivarti, and Anand, and we were trying to write how do we go about and create a transformation journey. And I picked up your book,
Thank you.
yeah, about the assessment which you have written about the DevOps, and quite a lot, a significant amount of learning I had to build our DevOps transformation journey. That how do you go and do that? And one of the transformation step is assessment, and that holistic assessment which you have put together. Some of the dimensions we picked up from there, that becomes a part of it. So my gratitude to you,
Thank you
and it
very
was
much.
lovely for creating our program.
Wow, that's nice. I mean, it's really wonderful to hear that from a leader like you. So thank you so much. I think one of the things which I might say before when I step back to, I mean, reflect and speak my mind loud is, I think first and foremost, this book readers club is a brilliant initiative that has been brought out by all you thought leaders in this space. And Akhil, and thank you for being the pioneer to speak on the pause principle, which indeed is very important for all of us. Something that I have consciously learned, maybe today as you were speaking, in hindsight, I was reflecting on whatever I have written, shared, connected with people. And indeed, I think reflection and that introspection is what connects us back to life, back to our inner discovery, and what is it that we do way forward. When you're talking about the VUCA world or all this uncertainty and ambiguity and everything, I think the VUCA still remains VUCA, but the pause brings some amount of personal clarity to us in terms of how we handle, manage, or deal with the situation at hand. This is what has been my personal learning. I mean, obviously, you don't diminish the level of uncertainty or ambiguity, those are facts that still remain. But it clears the mist that allows you to take the next few steps forward until you see the next further steps. And a personal experience that I would like to share is like in terms of reflecting, giving back, and growing the people around you. I felt that it works across and at all levels. It works like when you give back to your seniors, it works when you give back to your teams, it works when you give back to peers, it works in non professional or rather in personal dimensions also. I would say like one example which I would like to quote here. I mean, from my very recent books, when things change. This book is purely my experience from caregiving for my mother who passed away early this year, after a long battle with cancer and kidney failure. And caregiving for her during those months when she battled with critical illness taught me taught me real agility. I mean, what we talk about in our profession, how do we apply it at a personal level? I realized that when you go through the grind, it's just unsaid. I mean, how do you manage everything, keep your headspace, deal with uncertainty, and still, I mean, you have to still move on to solve the puzzle. So all of this, and then I would say networks, connections, people, the relationships that we build, how we give to others also comes back to us at times when we really need it. A close friend of mine, or rather a lady in my team, who a few years back, I mean, was dealing with a similar challenging situation. She was working with me in an indirect capacity, not a direct team member though. And I remember each and every time when she used to have this challenge with her father facing cancer and things going haywire, I used to end up doing her share of deliverables along with what I was anyway supposed to do in my role. Because it was not doing her work or my work. It was all about looking at the bigger picture and not letting goals getting cascaded, not focusing on the problem and not on the person whom I knew was an excellent performer, but the situation demanded that she needed some support. Because it was a cost center, I mean, we didn't have more hands to get funded. But I think over a period of time, the relationship that it built between us was phenomenal. And we still have that bond today over past many years. So I was fortunate enough to get good teams, and I was fortunate enough to get good leaders, apart from a personal circle, which is like incredibly my board of directors, like Nivarti. Nivarti is a very close friend of mine and one of my personal board of directors as a go-to source for anything to brainstorm and soundboard on. So this has been my personal experience. Just learn, absorb, keep learning, keep giving. It's
Yeah.
not important when you write a book, when you share a book, it may not be your target audience may not be everyone. It will never happen. But even if it makes a difference to even one person, one project, one person at a time, I think it is a step in the right direction and all worth the effort.
Yeah.
And my last book was just an attempt to help someone else who's dealing with a similar situation to pick up and treat it as an empowerment journal so that they can face change better. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Urmila, and we would love to have you, in one of the sessions, talking about your own books as well and presenting, your insights on those books and the process you went through as well. Thank you for sharing your reflections and thoughts.
Thank you,
And
Nirti.
and Urmila, in the book also the similar examples he has shared, and the caring is the important part of the pause, is what he talks about. And in your case, it was a mother, and then how do you have given the care? Talks about one of the sports coach and how caring he was for the 11 members or the 13-member team of his and the football team, and the kind of love the in the world of the corporate, love is like, no word to that, but it's really that how do you care about your team, about their growth, about their journey, how much you are able to share your uh, sometimes like taking a step back and say, what, I don't want to take the front seat, let this team take this front seat and do that. That's also the giving, that's also the caring,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the moment you start giving that a space to them, you find that the growth happens. And just giving that a space to them, you will reflect back and say that, aha, I have grown so much, right? Become so much bigger just because of that I have shared all that. And the caring is also, it talks about very beautifully, wherever this team will face some challenging situations in the matches, he will come forward and he will not allow the teams to come and be with them, right? And it also resonates with one of our cricket captain, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, and you will see that his character of the caring and bringing the team forward when the matches he wins, right? Or he has won those matches. And it resonates that how pause can happen in those moments of caring and the love, right? And Urmila, you can share your more relation with your mother, and how much it feels that you have got connected with yourself and grown lips in the bounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Urmila. I think we will have a separate session with you. I'll connect with you offline to make that happen for sure. Thank you for joining us. And we have Vasudev as well now, who I think likes to share his reflections. Hi, Vasu. How are you?
Hi. So very nice to be a part of this sharing. So when we are discussing about, leadership and succession planning, how pause helps, I just, since there was a call for how to relate to some experiences, I thought I'll share one of it. Now, the situation is like this, that, we have to identify somebody who can take on the responsibility after we leave, either through superannuation or retirement. In this case, my case was a superannuation. And there was a situation where we had identified two people and went through with the management. The critical thing was we cannot pre-announce that a person will take on this succession from one another person he's going to lead the team 2 years later or 3 years later, because till the final papers are signed on the dotted line, it is not official yet. But still, preparation for succession has to go on, and so it was going on for 2 years. A point had reached where, because the other person was not aware, he thought of moving. But then what happened was that before he actually presented his papers to move on, the management was able to get to a point where he can be moved to a next position, which is one step away from the leadership position. So at that point of time, there was a conversation saying that between the two of us, saying that, how did you know that I was leaving? I don't trust you anymore. You have betrayed my trust. So at that point of time, I had to take in that. Luckily, very consciously, because of my exposure in other areas, yoga, psychology, spirituality, and the rest of it, I knew this was a reaction, and the other person was not his original self when he made the statement. Uh, 3 to 4 weeks later, he came back and said, "We are going to be taking back. Can I take back my papers of moving on? Can I retract my?" So, because we had seen the potential in the person, luckily for us, the leadership also approved, and it had to. We had to continue. We continued the process, all without him knowing. A lot of coaching training was going on. Finally, when he had to take on the mantle, when I had to leave the organization, he just said, "Now I know what you were trying to do for the past 2 years." Okay, so a question for a leader is actually, without having to actually reveal the plan, you can't reveal officially something that can happen 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line. And this is a very pertinent question in succession planning. We can't even pre-declare any possible promotion or salary raise, till it comes from, the process, HR, and all of that stuff. How do you continue to trust when when another person turns aggressive and realize that it is not his original self? And that's where pause helps, I feel. Thank you.
Thanks. So again, I just have, probably not a comment, my own experience to share. I think it's more on the level of trust you build with your own team members, right? What is the level of confidence and trust mutually that is built between you? I have had my team members coming and telling me that, okay, I am looking out, can you help me? There are a lot of constraints in the organization, and we operate within the organizational constraints. When you look at the situation, probably you could reflect, and you are more experienced than most of us here, for sure. That I think, yeah, if you have, or if there was a possibility to develop a better trust equation, and things could have been, better.
Yes.
when
So,
you-
yes, very true. See, trust and relationship is a long haul.
yeah,
It requires an investment in relationship.
absolutely, yes.
So it was more of a, you see, many times when a person says, "I don't trust you," it is his perception. So basically, when you face such a person as a leader, you have two choices. You can react to it and say, "I've done all this for you all this while, why you're not justified in taking it." Or you can pause
Yeah,
and say, "Okay, you feel so. What is the basis of your response?"
yeah,
Okay, and solution will not come in that meeting when it comes to a feeling of distrust. It
absolutely.
has to come over a period of time by a change of mindset in the other person, and that is an investment of a leader in the person.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yuvarti, we have 7 minutes.
Yes.
Um,
I think Akhil, anything else to add from the book?
just from the book side, the last principles is about the authenticity, and I'm not going to talk about much because we have not time at all. We have to become authentic and take a space to reflect back that how authentic I have been, right? And authenticity, the self-awareness and the feedback is the mechanism to get the authenticity about yourself, right? And and again, the reflections model, reflections before, reflections in actions, and reflections after, is also provide you the space of connectedness and finding out my authenticity, right? So that's the last principle. But before going forward, I think one of the questions which you asked me, Dimitri, before we start, sorry, Nivarti, extremely sorry for that. Um, what other books that we can read or can supplement onto that? And I did some research, and some of them probably will cover next time. The four books which I have found is very important in this. The one is Wait, the Art and Science of Delay. And one of the principle, I think one of the places we talked about the cost of delay, right? Cost of delay, but then take the decisions as late as possible. So I really, really like that particular part of it. The Wait, the Art and the Science of the Delay. The one of the book which talks about is, it talks about the Blink, and by the Malcolm Gladwell.
Gladwell, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last, the one more book which I really, really appreciate is that Nudge. Nudge. Nudge is a very powerful book into this space. And since it is about listening and the questioning, one of the book from the pause perspective, I just found a book called Just Listen, Mark Gluston. And it's an amazing books, and maybe we'll touch upon each one of them going forward and whenever we get some time. And these are the books in this pause space. Now, I have my own critics about this book as well. And the one line is that you will find out when you start reading this book, sometimes repetitive, right? But then I pause back and I said that, okay, so why is it repetitive? It's just to make sure that you get the concrete ideas about the pause is the important part, integral part of being the coach and the leader. Yeah. Apart from that, this book is a fantastic. It has been used across the leadership generations across the world. Yeah. Thanks, Nivati.
Yeah, I think there is one question. Will authenticity bring vulnerability? If so, how to deal with it?
Oh, wow. And so we do not have a time, and Hari Krishna, salute to you to bring the vulnerabilities, right? So becoming vulnerable is an important part of it, right? So what happens if I don't show my vulnerabilities? Where the trust is going to come from, right? But how do you want to become vulnerable is up to you. How much you wanted to hold back, because people will be able to find out who you are, right? And 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 there is another book called the Power of Vulnerability, and there is a TED talk as well. If you guys can look at the authentic, being authentic is also showing my the other face, right? It's not always showing my facade, but showing that who I am. And when you show that vulnerability of yours, people get connected to you. When you show that vulnerabilities, you are not derailing the train, but you're slowing down your train. How do you do the vulnerability sharing? Maybe we can, Hari Krishna, we can have some discussions, maybe some point of time, or we can have some discussions about the power of vulnerabilities. But I would recommend that go and watch the TED talk. She has given the amazing work about the power of vulnerability.
Yeah, actually, the question is the other way around, Hari. So, which means vulnerability brings more authenticity rather than authenticity bringing vulnerability. So, if you are able to showcase your vulnerabilities, your own true self, right, and it is contextual and to the environment and the safety you feel within that environment, the level of vulnerability that you can display. And the level of vulnerability that you display within the context of that environment will define how authentic you are in that particular context and within that group or the environment that you are in, right? So it is the vulnerability that brings authenticity rather than authenticity bringing vulnerability. And how to deal with it, it's about your comfort level. The comfort level you have in displaying your true self in that particular context. It's about how comfortable you are in your own skin in a given context, in that particular environment, in that particular group of people. That defines how vulnerable you can be. And then that also defines how authentic you are. And it is directly relative to the imposter syndrome, right? So the the lesser authentic you are, the more imposter you will be. I hope that explains, the answer that you are looking for. Absolutely, we can. There is a talk on vulnerability on my YouTube channel. If you want to look at it, I think it's a great talk that we had with Christopher Bramley rather. So you can possibly look at that as well. Okay, I think we have hit the time. Thank you everyone for joining us and making quite it an interactive session. And we would love to have you back in our future sessions. And if you are keen to present your own book reviews, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to have you on board and presenting here. And Akhil, thanks a lot for kicking this off. And I'm pretty sure you will be very very much coming forward for future books as well, because you have a great never ending collection of insights and the books. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll look to see you back in a fortnight. Thank you.